over 200 years, the UK's rail network has moved passengers from place to place. Tens of thousands of men, women and children have boarded trains every single day since those earliest journeys. For the vast majority, the journey ends without incident, but for an unlucky few, something goes wrong and the railway adds another disaster to the record books. We tell the stories of those darkest days and the people caught up in them. Welcome to Signals to Danger.
3 people have died after a passenger train derailed near Stonehaven in Aberdeenshire this morning and caught fire.
We went through a massive fireball. I could feel the heat coming through the windows and all the windows I could see were just orange.
36 people were killed and more than 100 injured in this morning's train crash at Clapham Junction in South London. 2 commuter trains carrying more than 1,300 passengers collided shortly after 8 o'clock. A third train ran into the wreckage.
Hello and welcome back to an episode, after a while, of Signals to Danger. It has been some time since you've last heard from me, but given everything that's gone on recently, I thought it might be time for me to start talking to you again. At another point, we might have more of a conversation about the hiatus I've just taken from the podcast, but for right now, it's probably just a good time to talk about what has just taken place here on the UK rail network. On Friday evening, many of us discovered from breaking news alerts or social media that the emergency services were attending an incident on a railway line near to Bedford. This in itself is not an unusual thing to hear because, well, that's normally what they say when something's happened that brings the blue lights to the railway, more often than not when someone's been hit by a train. But myself, like any others, quickly realised that this was a far more serious incident, and as photos started doing the rounds on WhatsApp groups and the internet, it became clear that this was a thankfully rare but truly tragic case of 2 trains colliding on the main line. In this case, both of them passenger trains, and it was clear from the early stages that this had been something of a substantial collision. Reports of injuries, eyewitness accounts and rolling news updates began to flesh out the story, making it clear that this was a serious incident. The evening saw a fleet of air ambulances and other emergency service teams descend on Elstow, just south of Bedford itself. Before long, over the next day or so, it was confirmed that at least 100 people had been injured in the accident, and that tragically one of the drivers of the trains, 60-year-old Sean Burton, had tragically lost his life. Speculation on causes and discussions around a possible chain of events were prevalent on all forms of media as early as, several hours after the incident. And I will admit, while I wouldn't do it publicly, these were some of the types of conversations that I was involved in privately with colleagues, friends and contacts from the industry. It's only natural, I suppose, to try and search for reasons in the face of something that you don't fully understand. While we heard from eyewitnesses and news anchors over the weekend, there were many of us who couldn't understand how this accident occurred. We were hearing that from commentators on the news, from people on our social media feeds. How has this happened? But that lack of understanding and confusion was probably felt more strongly within the industry. 2 trains coming into contact on the operational railway is incredibly rare. In fact, by my own reckoning, this is only the 3rd time since 1999 that this has happened. And it's fundamentally because of the systems that are designed to prevent it from happening. While the media and the general public certainly have a relatively basic understanding of this, red, yellow and green signals, for an example, and just for the record, on the railway they are yellow and they're not amber. But within the industry, we are, probably somewhat more aware of what systems are in place and that they should have prevented this from happening. And the level of surprise and confusion was probably somewhat more intense. That being said, this afternoon on the 24th of July, I say this afternoon, I wrote this last night, but it's now the 25th of July, so yesterday, we received our first tranche of information regarding what has been uncovered by the Rail Accident Investigation Branch so far. With that information now publicly available and widely reported, and with some speculative conversations still taking place out there around the finer details and causation of the accident, I thought I would take this opportunity to talk briefly through what we do and indeed what we do not know about the incident at Elstow on the 19th of June 2026. Now, this is a flash briefing. This is the short episode. It's the quick version. So there won't be an awful lot of detail. There'll just be the things that we do know for definite so far. And I will apologise. It's been about a year since I've done one of these, so I'm a little out of practice. So I apologise if the sound isn't what you're used to. I will get back into this properly, and I will get back to doing it properly. The one thing I will say before we get started, it is important, it's so important that throughout this process we absolutely keep in mind two things. Firstly, that this incident has resulted in a tragic loss of life, and there is an air of respect that we should maintain when we're discussing it. And secondly, the process of the investigation, well, it's not only ongoing, it is currently at a very early stage. So there will be many things that are still to be uncovered as the RAIB and BTP do their jobs. With that in mind, let's get going. Elstow is found just to the south of Bedford, which is itself on the Midland Main Line, about 50 miles to the north of the line's southern terminus at London St Pancras Station, which is just next door to King's Cross and the terminus of the East Coast Main Line. The section of line that this accident took place on is 4-tracked and signalled using 4-aspect colour light signalling. That means that drivers will see a sequence of red, which means danger or stop. In advance of this, they'll get a single yellow, caution, a double yellow preliminary caution, and finally a green proceed aspect. The lines in the area consisted of an up and down fast and slow pairs, so they were arranged left to right in the direction of travel, so heading south, as up slow, up fast, down fast. It was the up fast where the collision between the two trains took place. In terms of a sequence of events, there were of course two trains involved, and the first of these was 1 Bravo 67, an East Midlands train service from Nottingham to St Pancras, planned to leave Nottingham at 15:50, and which actually departed 3 minutes late before picking up additional delays as it headed down the country, about 19 minutes late by the time it reached Market Harbour at 16:45. Bravo 67, that was formed of one of East Midlands' new 5-car Class 810 units, that's 810015. They are a bi-mode unit being introduced to replace an ageing fleet of Class 222 Meridians, and have only been in place for a short period of time. They've been built and tested over the last few years, but they're now finally coming out into service. They're similar but slightly different to the Class 80X stock, so 800s, 801s, 802s, 805s, and it's their 807s now. You've seen them all over the network. They're built on Hitachi's AT300 platform, but with the 810s, the vehicle lengths are slightly shorter to allow for 10-car sets, or 2 5-car sets coupled, to be accommodated at St Pancras. Around the point that 1 Bravo 67 was at Market Harbour, the second train involved departed Corby, just to the north of Kettering, and that was 1 Hotel 46, the 1640 departure, also bound for St Pancras. Hotel 46 was formed of another East Midlands unit, a 4-car Class 360, 360115. These are an older unit. They're based on the Siemens Desiro platform, which means they're very similar to Class 350s you'll see up and down the West Coast, and Class 185s operated by TransPennine Express, and they were introduced around the start of the 2000s. 1 Hotel 46 started its journey, called at Kettering and Wellingborough, before it arrived into Bedford at around 17:09. And at around about the same time 1 Hotel 46 was in the platform at Bedford, 1 Bravo 67 ran through the station non-stop on the upfast. And this is the point where things appear to go wrong, because we know that shortly after passing through Bedford, 1 Bravo 67 was brought to a stand at around Whiskey Hotel 152 signal, around 2.5 miles south of the station. This now has been confirmed as having taken place as the train experiencing a fault with its AWS, or automatic warning system, which caused the train's brakes to apply and brought it to a stand next to that signal head. With the train at its stand, the signalling system recognised its presence and therefore should have held the signal in the rear or behind it at danger. This signal was Whiskey Hotel 154, and with that at red, it would have protected 1 Bravo 67 until it got on the move again. We have also had it now confirmed by the RAIB that this is 4-aspect automatic signalling, meaning that it shows aspects that are determined by what the system knows about where trains are. If it detects a train in a berth, it'll put that signal to danger, and the subsequent sections behind it, if they're automatically controlled, will display appropriate aspects based on that. We also know that Signal was equipped with AWS, meaning that any train approaching it should have received a warning requiring an acknowledgement if it was showing anything other than a green aspect, and if the driver failed to acknowledge this in little over 2 seconds, that would result in the train's brakes being applied. With 1 Bravo 67 coming to a stand further down on the up fast at 15:10, 1 Hotel 46 departs Bedford on the up slow. The forward-facing CCTV from the unit captures a single yellow aspect displayed to the driver, indicating to him that the next signal may be at danger and to be prepared to bring the train to a stand. The train then continued along until it reached Bedford South Junction, which was where trains move across between the fast and the slow lines, where another single yellow was displayed and the train was routed across from the up slow across the series of points that took it across the down slow and then onto the up fast, the same line as the now standing Class 810. At this point on the up fast, 1 Hotel 46 approached Whiskey Hotel 154, that signal protecting 1 Bravo 67. Forward-facing CCTV showed it to be as red as 1 Hotel 46 approached and passed it. So trains are equipped with devices similar to an airplane's black box. So we've talked about this previously. We call these on-train data recorders, or OTDRs. Investigators are still analysing the OTDR from that leading cab, which means that as of today, nobody can tell whether or not the driver of 1 Hotel 46 received or acknowledged the AWS alert, which should have sounded in the cab, and this won't be clear until a later stage if the recorder is able to confirm it. The recorder from the rear cab, however, has been analysed and has recorded the behaviour of the train, so braking and speed, things like that. And the RAIB have shared that the train's speed rose to about 76 miles an hour before a brake application took place. Around 9 seconds later, at a speed of around 49 miles an hour, the train collided with the rear of 1 Bravo 67. And in terms of sequence of events from the official source, the RAIB, this is all investigators have really been able to share at this point. We can garner some additional little bits of information from looking at photographs in the context of what we've been told there. So we know that the RAIB tell us that this train was, that 1 Bravo 67 was standing near to Whiskey Hotel 152. We can see from the images that the impact must have propelled it forwards about 2 to 3 carriage lengths, which is a considerable distance, which likely speaks to the forces involved. And we've all seen photographs of the damage to the respective trains, which tell their own tale about how substantial this incident actually was. Since the point that the accident occurred, Network Rail and the investigating bodies, the RAIB and the BTP, have worked tirelessly to gather all the evidence that they need from the site, and the recovery effort has been underway. An enormous crane has lifted all 7? Is that bad maths? 9. 4 car and a 5 car. 9. I am recording this at 6:04 in the morning, so I apologise for some slow maths there. But all the vehicles have now been lifted clear of the main line and moved to the field adjacent. It's the same field that served as a landing pad for the air ambulances and a bit of a triage point for the ambulance service on Friday evening. Network Rail are now in the process of repairing damage caused to the infrastructure as a result of the incident. I believe there's a length of track that fully needs to be replaced. The incident's been made a bit more complicated to recover because of the overhead line equipment. Network Rail told us earlier on over the weekend that they needed to take down some of the overhead line equipment because it's difficult to lift things out when you've got wires above them. Now, The last thing on the update from the RAIB that we've received so far is a list of what they're going to focus on as part of this investigation. None of them are particularly surprising. Obviously, the sequence of events and the actions of those involved, but they're going to be focusing on the status and performance of the braking, AWS, and other safety systems from 1 Hotel 46. They're going to be looking at the reason 1 Bravo 67 was brought to a stand, the status of Whiskey Hotel 154 signal and its AWS equipment, as well as the signal's positioning, visibility, and conspicuity, how obvious it is. Unsurprisingly, they're also going to be looking at crashworthiness performance of both trains during the collision, and I'd imagine an element of that is going to look at how well they play together. You can draw your own conclusions from the image of the two, well, the leading and the trailing end, and how they've interacted with each other. Finally, they're also going to look at the status and performance of the braking, AWS, and other safety systems on 1 Hotel 46. And actually, they're going to be looking at, lastly, so that wasn't the final one is actually, they're going to be addressing the processes used to assess the risk of a signal overrun at that location, which will probably be very important considering what happened, and any control measures intended to address that. Make no mistake, I'm pretty confident this is not going to be a quick investigation, and while we might see an interim report at some point in the coming months, I wouldn't be surprised if we are waiting 12 to 18 months for a finalised version, which would be in line with what we've seen at Salisbury and Tillerthig. It's more or less everything we can say for sure at this point with regards to the incident. It's a tragedy for any accident of this nature, but it's a substantial one that we've had, unfortunately, again, on the UK rail network. As of yesterday afternoon, when the RAIB published their report, we obviously have the tragic death of the driver, but 162 people were injured in this incident, and 102 of them required hospital treatment. And as of yesterday, 53 people are still in hospital and 8 are still in a critical condition. So there's a lot of things that we need to know about what went wrong, but we need to spare a moment to think about those who have been involved as well. And that is about it for this mini episode. I'm pretty sure my voice is nowhere where it needs to be. The audio editing, we shall wait and see, because I'm not going to find that out until I've stopped recording. If you've been following the news on this incident and you wanted a little bit more of an insight or someone to pull together what we know already, I hope this has been helpful. If you are hoping for more Signals to Danger content on the regular, well, I hope to start making episodes again soon. And while I won't put a date on it, please keep watching this space. The podcast has been on a hiatus, but we aren't gone yet. Until next time, and there will be a next time, travel safe.